Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to give a quick update here in regards to what we're expecting for our, I guess now lesser of a winter storm this weekend, mainly late Friday and into early parts of Saturday. So right now, the National Weather Service has issued winter storm watches across the majority of central Minnesota, stretching up to northwestern Minnesota and then down towards parts of west central Wisconsin. I think that a good chunk of this central area will probably be put into a winter storm warning tomorrow, just due to the fact I think we'll retain just enough snowfall for us to be put into that warning. But I think the southern parts of this winter storm watch, including Rochester, Mankato, they might even push it up a little closer towards the Twin Cities, even, is probably going to get thrown into a winter weather advisory just due to the fact that we're seeing potentially less snowfall than was initially thought. And speaking of snowfall, this is what we're looking at right now, last updated at 9 o'clock today from the National Weather Service, somewhere between about 4 to 7 inches across central Minnesota. But the reason that we're seeing less snowfall compared to what was initially thought is the system is speeding up, so it's not going to be as slow as initially thought, which would have allowed things to kind of sit around Minnesota, dump a little bit more snow, and make sure everything was fully saturated. So it would have just allowed more time for more snow to fall, but also the fact that, which I mentioned yesterday, is we're dealing with a fair bit of dry air, which wasn't initially thought it was going to be as dry as that. So our moisture is going to be fairly limited in terms of how deep our moisture is going to be. Usually, you want a deep pool of moisture, which allows for the whole area which you're going to be snowing to be fully saturated, and you need that saturation for the flakes to make it to the ground. But instead, it looks like we're going to have to work through some of that dry air, which is going to evaporate some of some of that initial snow. So honestly, don't be surprised if we see these snowfall totals, especially across the far southern region of this, where a lot of that dry air is going to be, plummet even more. I would highly anticipate the fact that snowfall, especially on that southern edge, is going to be much weaker and not as high as what's initially shown here. And I think that parts of central Minnesota will probably also get dropped a little bit. And I wouldn't be surprised. I'll show you here what models are showing is if it might even get shifted a bit further north as well. So models have been kind of all over the place. The last couple of days have been really together. And as these shorter term models are coming into range now, finally, they're starting to be kind of all over the place. So initially, things looked pretty locked in for a pretty solid path across central Minnesota. And this is the HRRR, which is a short range model. Shows a swath of somewhere about 4 to 8 inches of snow across central Minnesota. But the thing you'll notice is it shifted farther north compared to where the National Weather Service had, where majority of the models had the other day, was across much of this region. So shifted farther north. And the thing you'll notice is some of the shorter models, they tend to kind of hold on to some heavier snow and they shift that north. But some of our longer range models, what you'll see is they're not holding on to that high snowfall expected, and they're also continuing with the same path. So we'll see which one totally ends up panning out. It's a very drastic shift for being fairly close to be going from that much snow to also almost very little, especially on some of those long range models. So this is your wrap or just another rapid refresh short range model. Once again, shows a fairly decent swath of about somewhere between 3 to 7 inches of snow. And we'll notice it's a much narrower band. So something that these short near range models are looking at is going to be where we're going to see another frontogenesis band, which was what we saw the other day, at least at the start of it on Monday, where we had a bunch of really heavy snow. It's just that thin, narrow area, which is starting to look more likely here than a widespread range of heavy snow. Just a very narrow band most likely is going to be setting up, which means we could once again see a very tight gradient in terms of a very heavy area of snow across central Minnesota, and then areas might see another like 3 to 5 inches, but we could see that one really heavy area of some higher snowfall totals. So this is the North American model, or the NAM, still showing that area of about 4 to 8 inches of snow. And once again, does include that slight shift to the north, leaving even St. Cloud in parts of Stearns County in right around that 3 inches. So fairly drastic change. NAM 3K, a little bit of a finer of the North American model, very similar solution here as we head to the European. The European's a little bit of a longer range model in terms of just what it looks at, less details, but you can tell that it dropped very significantly. Yesterday it was showing almost 10 to 12 inches of snow, and now we're sitting here in St. Cloud at just above 5. So very drastic, and this is, like I said, all just due to the fact that we're going to be seeing a much faster storm movement and a little bit more dry air. But the one thing this model does not do compared to the shorter range models is see those frontogenesis bands. So this model isn't really able to solve that, which is why some snowfall totals might be a little less with these models here, and including this one, which is the GFS or the American model, also shows much drastic less shift in that snowfall, and also seeing a slight shift northward, but it's not as drastic of a shift north as expected. So basically, this system is still really up in the air of what it's going to do. I personally think that we're looking more likely the fact to end up the lesser of the snow totals unless you get stuck with that band. But just the fact that things are moving so quickly, and from the start I was kind of worried about the fact that dry air was going to be sitting around, and that usually tends to really mess with our storm systems. Here in Minnesota, we see it happen quite a lot where we get predicted a bunch of snow, like 10 to 12 inches of snow, and then we end up only getting somewhere like 6 to 8. And most of the time it's because there's dry air, and it doesn't really end up snowing until we get all that dry air worked out and fully saturated. And sometimes radar will look like it's snowing, but in reality it's not. So I'm thinking that I'm almost certain that we're not going to be seeing what we were expecting right away in terms of those 8 to a foot of snow. I think it's still a fair narrow swath across central Minnesota. I don't think it'll be quite as drastic as a shift north, as some of these models are showing. I think it'll bump a little farther south. So I think St. Cloud is another really good shot of seeing probably somewhere between 3 to 6, maybe a localized area up to 8. But I don't think majority of areas are going to see anywhere north of 8 to 10 inches of snow. I think that's probably about our cap, and that's probably still well overdoing what we're going to see. But one thing we do still have going for us is the fact that we're going to have some pretty high liquid ratio rate. So still looking at somewhere between a 15 to 18 to 1. So still looking big fluffy flakes. And we shouldn't have a huge amount of wind shear, which sometimes can help destroy those flakes and make them really small needles. So we should have those big fluffy flakes, which helps us accumulate pretty quickly. Timing wise, what we're expecting here in terms of this timing is probably going to be, it's moved a little earlier, the fact that it's moving faster. So still thinking somewhere around 9 to midnight on Friday for arrival time, and things should probably be wrapping up by afternoon hours on Saturday. So I was initially saying maybe push travel back to Sunday, but honestly, you might be able to just push it back to Saturday afternoon, and it might be working out fairly fine. The majority of our snow will fall during the overnight on Friday, and then into our early morning on Saturday, which should be those worst times. So I'm going to have a couple more updates probably tomorrow as things get a little closer to there, and hopefully these models are able to fix whatever they're kind of debating about right now, and maybe have a better idea of the track timing and just overall snow totals for us. But for right now, don't be super shocked if you see snow totals drop once again, because just based on the trends, it's looking very likely that will probably happen. And then also, don't be super surprised to see the snowstorm arrive a little bit earlier. So both those things looking like a very real possibility. So I'll have another update tomorrow, and I might throw out another post with no video or anything, just if a big change happens or something like that. But otherwise, stay safe. Feel free to ask any questions, and I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your night.